The chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Poe, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for being here. Just so it's clear, I'm one of the numerous members of the Judiciary Committee that have asked for a second special prosecutor based on what Mr. Jordan earlier said. The Justice Department is responsible for investigating criminal conduct. Would that include criminal conduct by the NSA?
Yes.
Okay. We all learned under the prison that was happening years ago by the NSA that the NSA was doing, in my opinion, unconstitutional surveillance on Americans and their emails by tracking it and hacking in to see those emails. Came to light under Snowden, after Snowden, who I care nothing for, brought that to America's attention. The NSA said, we're not going to do that anymore, which I think is appropriate because I thought it was unconstitutional. And we've heard reports through the media that there has been unmasking of information. What I mean by that is classified information is seized on somebody, and someone else, an American, that their name is caught up in the communication, and if someone leaks who that was, unmask that individual, my understanding is if it's classified information, whoever does that unmasking has committed a felony. Is that correct?
The only distinction I would make, Congressman, is the unmasking typically is something done in the course of the intelligence analysis. The leaking would be a violation.
That's what I'm talking about, the leaking of that information. And as of today, has anybody been indicted under PRISM? Has anybody been indicted under leaking information on unmasking up until today? Has the Justice Department indicted anybody under those two scenarios and events?
We have indicted, prosecuted people for leaking. I'm not certain whether, I don't believe any of them related to unmasking.
So no one's been indicted, to your knowledge, which I want to bring up now the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act that has been discussed by this committee numerous times. It's the law that allows secret courts to issue secret warrants to try to go get terrorists that are operating overseas and get their information. Does the Justice Department present those FISA warrants to a FISA judge?
In situations where a warrant is required, yes, it needs to be obtained from a federal judge.
That's right, but the Justice Department is responsible for that, is that correct?
That's correct.
Also under FISA, once again, Americans are brought into the scenario because you target a foreign terrorist and then you go after their emails and then you find emails of Americans, and those are inadvertently caught in the surveillance of the target. According to the Washington Post recently, 90% of those inadvertent emails are on Americans. And my question to you is, why hasn't the Justice Department, the FBI, the intelligence community presented to Congress and our request that took place years ago, how many of those inadvertent emails, communications, text messages, conversations have been on Americans? We have been asked for the number. Do you know why that has not been brought to our attention? And let me just follow up with this reason. Here's the reason we need it. We're getting ready to maybe reauthorize 702, which I have a lot of problems with. I think it's unconstitutional in many other ways. But beside the point, here we are at a deadline getting ready to reauthorize it, and still the intelligence community refuses to tell us how many Americans' information has been seized. Can you tell us why we haven't gotten that information that we've asked for years?
No, I testified at a hearing with Director Coates, who I think would be a more appropriate person to answer that because he has access to the data and he has explained it. But I would simply point out that you use the term inadvertent. I think the term that we use is incidental. If you're
Incidental. I don't mind the problem, the name of the change.
My point is simply if you're investigating a foreign terrorist, knowing with whom that person is communicating may be relevant to your investigation. And so it's not...
That's not my question. My question was, we're getting ready to maybe reauthorize 702. I don't think we ought to reauthorize it until we find out from the intelligence community where there are no indictments that have been issued against the intelligence community based upon the statements that you have made to see whether or not they're violating the law, and they refuse to give this committee the information about how many people have been caught up in that. And it's been stonewalled by the intelligence community saying, well, we just can't do it. Why can't the intelligence community get some geek over at Best Buy and have them come in and answer that question with a few little taps into the big computer system? We just want the number.
The time of the gentleman has expired. The witness may answer the question.
As I explained, Congressman, I've heard Director Coates explain this, and he's better positioned than I.
So we don't know. Still don't know. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Gowdy, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Judge Poe. There are a lot of issues that I would like to ask you about, Mr. Deputy Attorney General. We had a terrorist incident in New York this week. We have 702 reauthorization that is pending in Congress. Gun violence, the opioid epidemic, criminal justice reform. But when I go home to South Carolina this weekend, trust me when I tell you, no one is going to ask me about any of those issues. They're going to ask me, what in the hell is going on with the Department of Justice and the FBI? The reason we have special counsel, this is a very important point, and you know it, the reason we have special counsel is because of a conflict of interest. The regulation itself specifically makes reference to a conflict of interest. And we don't like conflicts of interest because it undercuts people's confidence in both the process and the result. So let's be really clear why we have special counsel. There was either a real or perceived conflict of interest that we were fearful would either impact the result or people's confidence in the process. That's why we have something called special counsel, and that's why we have special counsel in this fact pattern. And then lo and behold, those who are supposed to make sure there are no conflicts of interest seem to have a few of their own. There's a senior prosecutor who sent obsequious emails to a fact witness. She can be described as nothing other than a fact witness. She's a really important fact witness if you pursue the line of inquiry that my Democrat friends want to pursue. They got off of collusion and now they're on obstruction of justice. She may be the most important fact witness in an obstruction of justice case. And the senior prosecutor for this conflict of interest-free special counsel sent a fawning, obsequious email to a fact witness. And then we have prosecutors assigned to conduct this investigation who donated almost exclusively to one candidate over another. And then we have a prosecutor assigned to this conflict of interest-free team that attended what was supposed to be, what he'd hoped to be, a victory party for Secretary Clinton. And we have a senior DOJ official, Mr. Deputy Attorney General, with an office that used to be 2 doors down from yours, meeting with Fusion GPS. And Fusion GPS, of course, was paying for Russian dirt on the very person that they're supposed to be objectively investigating. And then that same senior DOJ official's wife, the one that met with Fusion GPS, his wife was on the payroll of Fusion GPS. And then we have a senior agent assigned to investigate Secretary Clinton's email, help draft the exoneration letter where we changed the language from grossly negligent to extremely careless, interviewed Secretary Clinton in an interview I've never seen, and I doubt you have either in your career as a prosecutor, interviewed Michael Flynn, was actively involved in the investigation into the Trump campaign before the Inspector General found his text. So this agent, in the middle of almost everything related to Secretary Clinton and President Trump, sent pro-Clinton texts, anti-Trump texts to his paramour in response to being told maybe he is where he is to protect the country from that menace, Donald Trump, he said, I can protect our country at many levels. And then he said Hillary Clinton should win 100 million to nothing. Now think about that, Mr. Deputy Attorney General. That's a pretty overwhelming victory. 100 million to zero. And when I read that last night, what I thought was this conflict of interest free senior agent of the FBI can't think of a single solitary American who would vote for Donald Trump. That's where the zero comes in. Not a single solitary American he can imagine would vote for Donald Trump. This is the conflict of interest free special agent assigned. And then he went on, if that weren't enough, to belittle Trump supporters by saying he could smell them at a Walmart in Virginia. This is the person we needed to avoid a conflict of interest. And then he said this, they fully deserve to go and demonstrate the absolute bigoted nonsense of Trump. But he wasn't content to just disparage Donald Trump. He had to disparage Donald Trump's family. This is what he said, Mr. Deputy Attorney General. He said, the douchebags are about to come out. He's talking about our First Lady and children. This conflict of interest-free special agent of the FBI. This is who we were told we needed to have an objective, impartial, fair, conflict of interest-free investigation. So he's openly pulling for the candidate he had a role in clearing, and he's openly investigating a candidate that he has bias against. And then if that's not enough, he says Trump is an effing idiot. What the F just happened to our country? This is the same man that said he would save our country. What happens when people who are supposed to cure the conflict of interest have even greater conflicts of interest than those they replace? That's not a rhetorical question. You nor I nor anyone else would ever sit Peter Strzok on a jury. We wouldn't have him objectively, dispassionately investigate anything knowing what we know now. Why didn't we know it ahead of time? And my last question, my final question to you, and I appreciate the chairman's patience, how would you help me answer that question when I go back to South Carolina this weekend?
Congressman, first of all, with regard to the special counsel, Mr. Strzok was already working on the investigation when the special counsel was appointed. The appointment that I made was of Robert Mueller. So what I'd recommend that you tell your constituents is that Robert Mueller and Rod Rosenstein and Chris Wray are accountable, and that we will ensure that no bias is reflected in any of the actions taken by the special counsel or in any matter within the jurisdiction of the Department of Justice. When we have evidence of any inappropriate conduct, we're going to take action on it. And that's what Mr. Mueller did here. As soon as he learned about this issue, he took action. And that's what I anticipate that the rest of our prosecutors, our new group of U.S. attorneys, our Justice Department appointees, they understand the rules and they understand the responsibility to defend the integrity of the department. And if they find evidence of improper conduct, they're going to take action. So, Congressman, that's the best assurance I can give you. But actually, there's one other point, which is you should tell your constituents that we exposed this issue because we're ensuring that the Inspector General conducts a thorough and effective investigation, and if there is any evidence of impropriety, he's going to surface it and report about it publicly.
I'll try.
Time of the gentleman has expired. Chair